What I'm about to share isn't legend or folklore passed through generations. It's personal, because the monster I saw that night wasn't hiding under my bed or lurking in a stranger's window. It was my best friend at Whispering Narratives. We don't just tell stories. We open doors to the shadows, and sometimes those shadows reach back. You're not ready. I should have run the moment I heard him change. The night it happened, the air smelled like damp earth and cheap beer. The kind of night that feels endless, where the stars hang low enough to touch, and the fire's glow makes every story seem braver than it really is. We'd set up camp on the ridge just past Old Iron Creek, a place where no one in town went after sundown. They said it was cursed, but to Alex, my best friend since middle school, that was just an invitation. He always had that grin, the kind that dared the world to try and break it. Alex was fearless in ways I never understood. He'd jump from roofs, fight anyone twice his size, and drive his rusted pickup down country back roads without headlights, laughing while my stomach tied itself into knots. That night, though, I noticed something different. His jokes were shorter, his eyes a little too sharp. He kept checking the tree line like he was expecting someone to walk out of it. When I asked him if something was wrong, he just shrugged and tossed another log onto the fire. "Just waiting," he muttered. I laughed it off, thinking he was baiting me for a ghost story. But then I saw his hands. They were trembling. Alex didn't tremble. The silence pressed in. No crickets, no owls, no rustle of night creatures in the brush. Just the fire crackling and the sound of Alex breathing heavier than normal. I remember the way his shoulders hunched forward, as if the weight of something unseen was pulling him down. That's when he leaned close, voice cracked and raw. "Whatever happens, don't let me stop being me." I wanted to ask what he meant, but then it began. It started small, subtle, the kind of thing you could almost convince yourself you imagined. A twitch in his jaw, a ripple under the skin, like something was moving just beneath the surface. His fingernails scraped against the beer can, metal bending under the pressure of fingers that weren't human anymore. I froze because no part of me could rationalize what I was seeing. This wasn't stress. This wasn't sickness. This was something ancient crawling its way out of him. He coughed, a wet, tearing sound, and spat blood into the fire. Sparks hissed upward, sizzling against the night. His eyes flicked up to meet mine, half brown, half burning gold. The firelight caught them, and for a split second, I swear I saw not my friend, but a predator staring back. Then the bones started. The cracking echoed like dry branches snapping underfoot, one after another, until it became a grotesque rhythm. His spine arched, shirt ripping down the center as muscle expanded beneath it. He dropped to his knees, hands sinking into the dirt as claws pushed free where fingernails used to be. His scream wasn't just pain. It was fury, rage given a voice, splitting the air wide open. I should have run. Every instinct screamed at me to get up and move, to leave him, to survive. But I couldn't. This was Alex. The kid I'd shared secrets with under bleachers, the guy who carried me home drunk when I couldn't walk, the one who swore we'd make it out of this town together. You don't run from that. You can't. Loyalty is a chain heavier than silver, but loyalty has a breaking point. And mine was about to shatter, because what rose up from the dirt wasn't my best friend anymore. It was taller, broader, unstoppable, a shape built from hunger and violence. His face elongated into a snarling muzzle, drool steaming against the cold night air. His ribcage heaved with each breath, pulling in oxygen like fuel for a fire that couldn't be extinguished. The ground shook when he planted his clawed hands to steady himself, and every tree seemed to bend back, as if even the forest was afraid. And then, for one horrifying second, he looked at me and really looked, and I realized Alex was still in there, buried, trapped, watching. The last words he'd said echoed in my mind. Don't let me stop being me, but staring into that golden furnace of his eyes, I understood the truth. Alex was gone, and the thing that had replaced him was unstoppable. The forest had always been Alex's playground. He knew every trail, every deer path, every hollow where kids like us used to hide when life felt too heavy. But that night, under the swollen moon, it wasn't Alex who stood across the fire from me. It was the thing wearing his skin. He rose to his full height, impossibly tall now, his shoulders broad enough to block out the firelight. The flames flickered in the reflection of his eyes, two golden lanterns that burned with a hunger older than our town, older than either of us. His claws flexed in and out of the dirt, carving little graves into the earth, and when he inhaled, the sound was wrong. Not a breath, not the gasp of lungs trying to keep up, but a drag, a vacuum like the night itself was being pulled into him. I whispered his name, Alex. For a second, the beast tilted its head. Recognition? Pity? A fragment of humanity rattling like a broken chain. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could reach him. But then his lips peeled back in a grin no human face could ever wear, and he growled. It wasn't just a sound. It was a promise, the promise that no matter how fast I ran, no matter how well I hid, he would find me. I bolted. The forest swallowed me whole. Branches snapped under my boots, my lungs clawed for air, but all I could hear was the thunder of him following. Each step shook the ground like a falling tree. The beast didn't run like something alive. He surged, he crashed, he erased distance. Behind me, a howl ripped through the night. It wasn't Alex's voice anymore. It wasn't even human. It was a sound that stripped the marrow from your bones, that made every instinct scream that you'd already lost. I'd run these woods with him 100 times. But tonight they weren't the same. The trees seemed closer, sharper, the shadows deeper. Every path I thought I knew twisted away from me, as if the forest itself had chosen sides. And it wasn't mine. I glanced back once. Just once. He was there, crouched low, claws raking through the leaves, his body a blur of fur and muscle. His muzzle dripped, fangs bared, breath steaming in the cold air. And his eyes, God help me, his eyes weren't the eyes of a stranger. They were Alex's, watching, tormented, pleading. But his body didn't listen to whatever shred of him was left. I tripped over a root and slammed into the dirt. Pain exploded up my arm, but before I could even scream, he was there, looming over me, claws sunk into the ground on either side of my head. His breath seared my face, hot and rank, every exhale vibrating my chest like the bass from a speaker turned too loud. The beast leaned closer. Saliva dripped onto my cheek, sizzling against the heat of my skin. His growl deepened into something that didn't just fill the air. It filled me, like he was speaking directly into the marrow of my bones, and then he didn't kill me, he stopped. Inches from tearing me apart, his claws trembled in the dirt. His jaws snapped shut with a violent clack, as if he was holding himself back from an instinct he couldn't control. I saw it then, a war raging inside him. Alex, somewhere deep beneath all that fur and fury, fighting the beast for control. His chest heaved, his body shaking, torn between the monster's hunger and the man's loyalty. And for a fleeting heartbeat, I believed he could win, but then the moonlight shifted through the canopy, washing his fur silver. His body stiffened and the war ended. The beast won. He roared, a sound that shattered the silence of the ridge, that made birds burst from trees miles away. And then, with a single swipe of his claws, he ripped through the trunk of a tree like it was paper. The message was clear. If he hadn't chosen to spare me, I'd already be dead. I stumbled backward, scrambling through the dirt, but he didn't strike again. He just stood there, chest heaving, eyes locked on me, and in a guttural, broken voice that was half snarl, half human, he whispered, "Run." So I did. I ran, knowing he could have killed me. I ran knowing that every step he took was stronger, faster, unstoppable. I ran because if I stayed, if I hesitated for even a second, Alex's promise would come true, and deep down I already knew the truth. He wasn't sparing me. He was hunting me. The word run should have saved me. It didn't. It just stretched the night into something thinner, meaner, a wire pulled tight between us, humming with the promise of blood. I tore downhill toward Old Iron Creek, feet slamming roots I used to leap as a kid. Back then, this ridge was where we learned to swear, to spit, to throw rocks at the water and pretend each splash was a future we didn't want. Tonight the creek sounded different, fast, swollen, like it had swallowed the moon and was trying to choke it back up. The beast gave me space. That was worse than being on top of me. He let me believe the distance mattered. He let my lungs fill with hope so he could rip it out. A fallen hemlock blocked the trail. I hit it sideways, rolled hard, gravel grinding into my palms. Pain flared bright. Good. Pain meant I was still here. I scrambled up the trunk and slipped, catching myself on a branch that groaned like an old door hinge. Behind me, something heavy moved through the trees without hurry, a storm with claws that knew exactly where I was going. "Alex," I rasped, not sure if I was praying or cursing. A memory flashed, him teaching me to whistle with 2 fingers, the sound sharp and smug as a robin. He'd grinned. "Told you, man. It's just breath. Make it obey. Breath obeys a boy. The night obeys a monster." I made the creek and skidded down the shale bank. Cold spray kissed my face. The water carried iron, real iron, from the old mill upstream. Town law said iron turned rot back on itself. Wards, wedding nails over door frames, horseshoes above nursery beds. I plunged my hands into the current, grabbed a flat stone, and felt the chill climb my wrists like a blessing. Across the water, he stepped into view. Moonlight braided his fur silver, but his body ate that light instead of wearing it. He was mass more than shape. The kind of size your mind refuses until your bones do the math for you. Steam roped off his shoulders. Claws flexed, slow, patient, as if he were counting my heartbeats by feel. "Please," I said, and hated that I meant it both ways. He prowled along the bank, eyes never leaving me. The creek raged between us, loud enough to drown a scream, not loud enough to drown his growl. I lifted the iron-stained rock. "You remember this place?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "First time you jumped the creek, you lost a shoe. Swore the water would give it back if we said we were sorry." A low sound rolled out of him, almost curious. Almost. "This creek took your shoe," I said. "But it gave us back our nerve." Something shifted in his gaze. The tiniest crack. The man behind the monster pressed against the glass. "Alex," I whispered, "because sometimes names are keys, even if the lock hates you. Make it obey." The beast's jaw twitched. For one flicker of a second, his breath hitched the way his used to when he laughed too hard. The air around him stuttered. I threw the stone. It wasn't a weapon so much as an argument. It hit his forearm and hissed like a brand. He reared back, more surprised than wounded, a snarl shredding the dark. The sound knocked birds out of sleep a half-mile away. He looked at the welt blooming black on his fur, and then at me, and the human part of his face, what little remained, closed like a door. So much for keys. He stepped into the creek. The current shoved at him. He shoved back. Water climbed his shins, his thighs, lashing white against muscle that didn't belong in any world with rules. Each step forward boiled the surface around his legs, iron stink lifting like a curse peeling off in strips. He didn't rush. He unhurried. There's a particular terror in watching a thing that can kill you decide to take its time. The bank on my side was slick. I backed up. The shale slid under my heel and I sat down hard. Palms again. The grit raw now. Skin torn open like paper. He kept coming. The creek howled against him and broke. "Don't," I said. It came out small. I hated the small. He reached my bank and hauled himself up as if gravity were a rumor. Up close, the heat off him slapped my face. Every breath he took rattled my ribs. The moon dimmed when he blocked it, and the creek's roar narrowed to the drum of my heartbeat. "You told me," I said, scrambling backward on elbows. "You told me to run." His head cocked. Eyes lit coals. He leaned in, close enough that I could see where fur thinned along his muzzle, the ghost of freckles that used to sunburn every June. My hand found another stone, smaller, iron cold. I pressed it to my sternum like a saint's medal. Sweat made my shirt stick. The rock slid. Stupid. Amateur. I thought of all the things silver was supposed to be and all the things we didn't have. Bullets, chains, blessed blades. We had creek stink and a memory. Alex, the name snagged. I forced it out again, stronger. "Alex, you carried me home, remember? Freshman year. I couldn't walk. You said, 'I've got you.' You did." His breath hitched. The great body shivered, not from cold. Nothing this big feared cold, but from that terrible civil war under the skin. "I've got you," I said. Because sometimes repetition is a spell, and faith is an iron nail through a doorframe. He roared, not at me, not past me, through me. The sound shook my jaw, made my teeth ache in their gums. A paw slammed the bank beside my head, claws carving little graves. He lowered until his eyes filled my world. The war behind them flared, golden and brown, wolf and boy, hunger and mercy. "Make," I whispered. tears hot and humiliating. Make it obey. For a heartbeat. The night held its breath. Then the scent changed. Wet metal, old blood, the faintest bite of ash. The wind shifted and so did his gaze. Over my shoulder, back toward the ridge. He sniffed, nostrils flaring and his ears pricked to a sound I couldn't hear yet. A bell, not a church bell, not the mill's shift change. A small, stubborn bell with a cracked voice. Mrs. Hargreaves' goat bell, the one she swore kept coyotes off her fence. It rang again, thin and defiant, from somewhere up the trail. The beast's head swung. Decision carved itself across him like lightning. He turned from me. Every muscle in my body wanted to sag with relief. Instead, I stood, slow, knees liquid, and did the only thing loyalty and terror could agree on. I moved with him, because the bell wasn't mercy. It was bait, and the thing we'd both become, hunter and witness, had been invited. He launched uphill, a dark avalanche. I followed, stupid and shaking, palms bleeding. Iron-sour creek water drying on my skin like a ward that wouldn't hold. We broke into the old clearing, our clearing, where the bonfire had burned down to sullen coals. The bell rang once more, then stopped. The air felt layered, thicker than smoke, crowded with shapes that weren't quite there until they were. That's when I saw the first glint of silver. Not moonlight, not water wire strung low between stumps, coiled around stakes, woven into a pattern any trapped animal would learn to hate. My stomach dropped through the earth. Someone else had opened a door to the shadows tonight, and the shadows had reached for him. The beast slowed, sensed it, ears flat, teeth bared. He scanned the tree line, and then the snare sang. A loop snapped tight around his foreleg. He lurched, snarled, ripped free, almost. More wire flashed, cinched, bit deep. Another coil whipped his hind leg. A third snapped across his ribs like a burning ribbon. He roared and thrashed, tore up raw earth, dragged stakes behind him like dead soldiers. I stumbled forward, hands out, stupid with instinct. "Alex!" I shouted, voice cracking. "Don't fight it. Stop, stop." He fought it anyway. Because he is unstoppable. Because that's what they came to test. From the tree line, a voice slid out, calm, professional, almost bored, target engaged. Shadows stepped free of the trees, faceless behind matte masks, guns up, barrels haloed with small, mean lights, and the night, which had belonged to us, to fear and loyalty and iron water, became a killing floor. I looked at my best friend. He looked back through the cage of silver wire. The man I loved like a brother surfaced in that furnace for a final, impossible second. "Run," he said. Not a command this time. A goodbye. The clearing looked wrong, even before the first shot split the dark. Wrong because the air was too still, the coals too low, the tree line holding its breath. Wrong because Alex, the thing Alex had become, wasn't charging, wasn't tearing the world apart like he had been moments before. He froze. Every hair on his massive frame stood on end, muscles bunched, claws flexing like blades eager for a sheath. And then the silver sang again. The wires weren't crude snares. They were patterns, engineered, deliberate, beautiful in the same way a spider's web is beautiful right before it swallows a fly. They coiled around him, gleaming in the firelight like veins of the moon itself dragged down to earth. Each time he tried to wrench free, the wire dug deeper, flaring bright, hissing against his fur, as if the metal remembered every story it had ever been written into. The hunters stepped from the trees, not townsfolk, not drunks with rifles, professionals. Black fatigues, masks dull as stone, movements too calm, too rehearsed. Each carried rifles with barrels that shimmered faintly in the dying firelight, loaded with something worse than bullets. They moved like they had rehearsed this exact moment 1,000 times. Like Alex had been the endgame all along. Target locked, the same voice as before. Flat, clinical, completely detached from the sight of a struggling monster that had once been my friend. I stood rooted, hands shaking, torn between running and screaming. But the beast wasn't quiet. He roared again, sound tearing the night open. Birds didn't just fly. They vanished, as though they'd rather not exist within earshot of him. He thrashed, snapped the first wire, then the second. Silver dug into muscle, but he didn't stop. Blood sprayed where the metal bit, black in the firelight, steaming as it hit the dirt. "Hold position," the voice ordered. The hunters didn't flinch, not one. That's when I realized something that chilled me worse than the sight of Alex fighting his restraints. They weren't afraid. Not afraid of him, not afraid of me, not afraid of the night itself. This wasn't a hunt. This was a harvest. Alex locked eyes with me through the cage of wires. And for one impossible instant, his human face pushed through all that fur and fury. His lips shaped words, no sound. But I could read them like I'd read them on his face 100 times when we whispered secrets under the bleachers. Don't let me stop being me. I staggered forward, half out of instinct, half out of stupidity. "Stop, please!" "He's not..." A hunter turned, rifle raised, the barrel's glow fixed on me. My words cracked into silence. "You don't belong here," the voice said. Not cruel, not kind. Just matter of fact. Like a farmer telling a crow it picked the wrong field. And I knew then, this wasn't about Alex anymore. This was about all of them. Every legend, every whispered story, every claw mark people pretended was just a bear. They weren't myths. They were targets. Alex's roar cut my thoughts short. He tore loose from the third wire with a sound like snapping thunder. One hunter flew backward, rifle spinning into the fire, sparks exploding into the dark. The others raised weapons, but too slow. He was on them, unstoppable, rage embodied. Claws carved through one mask, snapping bone like twigs. Teeth closed around another's arm, tearing fabric, then flesh, then more. Screams broke the silence, sharp, human, pitiful. Gunfire answered. Silver rounds ripped through the clearing, burning trails in the air. Alex howled, staggered, fell, only to rise again. Always rise. No matter how much metal they pumped into him, he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. And in that chaos, firelight, blood, screaming, the forest shaking itself awake around us, I understood something that would never leave me. Loyalty isn't just about staying. Sometimes it's about choosing when to betray, because if I stayed, I was dead. If I helped him, I was a monster too. And if I ran, I'd never stop running because the truth was carved into my bones now. Alex wasn't my friend anymore. He was what comes after friendship, after mercy, after every promise we ever made. He was unstoppable. The clearing became a war zone. The coals from our fire hissed and spat as boot heels and claws churned them into sparks. The hunters barked, clipped orders. "Hold line, second volley," but their discipline crumbled the moment Alex slammed into them like a storm given teeth. One masked figure raised a rifle, muzzle flare bright as lightning. The silver round caught Alex in the shoulder. For a heartbeat, he stumbled, just long enough for 3 more shots to punch into his ribs. The smell of burning fur filled the air, a stench that clawed its way down my throat and settled like rot in my stomach. But he didn't go down. He never went down. Instead, he roared, an eruption so violent the hunters themselves faltered. One staggered back, boots slipping in the dirt. Alex lunged, claws finding the man's chest, tearing through fabric, body armor, and bone in one sickening pull. Blood sprayed the fire, sizzling as it hit the coals. The hunter's scream lasted half a second before it was swallowed by the sound of snapping ribs. The others panicked. Their formation broke. Silver rounds whined through the dark, ricocheting off rocks, carving holes in trees. One struck a branch above me, showering sparks of burning bark. I dropped flat to the ground, hands over my head, the earth shaking under every movement of the beast I once called brother. Another hunter swung a blade, short, serrated, its edge etched with runes I couldn't place. He slashed across Alex's arm, and for the first time the beast recoiled. The silver steel edge cut deep, leaving a welt that glowed molten white, like fire poured straight into his veins. Alex's howl shredded the clearing, a sound that wasn't pain alone. It was betrayal. I knew that sound. It was the same voice he'd used the day his father left, when he punched holes in the drywall of his trailer and swore he'd never forgive. Except now, the drywall was flesh and blood, and forgiveness was impossible. Alex lashed back. His claws closed around the blade, snapping it like glass, and in one sweep, he gutted the hunter who dared to wield it. The man's scream ended with a wet choke, body folding in on itself as Alex tossed him aside like nothing. I wanted to run. God, I wanted to run. But my feet stayed planted. Loyalty again. Heavy, choking, stupid loyalty. I couldn't leave him. Couldn't let this story end with hunters carving his body apart like a specimen. Yet I couldn't save him either. Every shot, every swing, every scream brought me the truth in brutal fragments. Alex wasn't fighting for survival. He was fighting to exist. He was paying the blood price demanded by the curse that owned him, and it was a price everyone in that clearing would pay. One hunter tried to flee, breaking from the group, sprinting for the tree line. Alex caught him mid-stride, jaws clamping around his leg. The man toppled, shrieking, dragging his hands through dirt and leaves. Alex pulled once, and bone snapped loud as thunder. The scream cut off. Another hunter raised something heavier, shouldered weapon, bulky barrel. My brain caught up a second too late. Grenade launcher. I screamed, "No!" But the sound drowned under the thunk of metal leaving the tube. The shell hit Alex square in the chest. For a moment the world went white. The blast rolled the clearing, heat and dirt slamming into me like a fist. My ears rang, my vision blurred. When I blinked the smoke clear, I saw him, staggering, body torn open, fur smoking, ribs exposed. He should have been dead. But Alex only straightened. His chest heaved once, twice. Then he moved, slow, deliberate, unstoppable. His claws dug trenches in the earth with each step. His golden eyes burned brighter than the fire, brighter than the moon. The hunter who fired the round fumbled, hands shaking as he reached for another shell. Too late. Alex hit him full force. The scream didn't last long. The firelight caught the spray, painting the night red. That was when I realized this wasn't a fight anymore. It wasn't even a slaughter. It was an exchange. Every wound Alex took he gave back in double. Every shot that should have killed him only deepened the fury he carried, blood for blood. And I knew the truth. The price wouldn't stop with the hunters. It would come for me too. Because Alex wasn't choosing victims anymore. He wasn't sparing me because of loyalty or mercy. He was sparing me because the blood price wasn't paid in full yet. And when it was, I would be the final debt collected. The clearing was a massacre. Bodies lay torn open like discarded clothes, masks cracked, rifles bent into useless shapes. Blood soaked the soil, mixing with the embers of our fire until the dirt steamed. The smell, burnt silver, wet fur, copper, ash, clung to everything. And at the center of it all stood Alex. Breathing ragged, fur slick with blood that wasn't just his own, eyes lit with that furnace glow. His chest rose and fell in violent rhythm, every inhale a growl, every exhale a threat. He looked less like a creature and more like a storm, unending, inevitable. But when his gaze found me, the storm faltered. "Alex," I whispered. The name felt like glass in my throat. For a heartbeat, his head tilted. Something human surfaced, not enough to save us, but enough to hurt worse than claws. Because in those eyes I saw recognition. I saw him remember who I was, and then I saw him remember what he was now. He staggered toward me, steps uneven, claws dragging. Wounded, yes, but unstoppable all the same. My back hit the trunk of an oak, rough bark digging into my skin. I had nowhere left to go. I thought of every moment between us. Cigarettes behind the school gym. Bloody knuckles after fights we never won. His laugh echoing in the bed of his truck. Headlights off, daring the night to blink first. And then his words from before it all began. "Don't let me stop being me. That's what loyalty is, isn't it? Not the easy parts. Not the bonfires or the laughs. Loyalty is choosing the knife when your friend begs you to wield it." My hand shook as I reached into the dirt. Fingers brushed cold metal. One of the hunters dropped sidearms. Small, black, etched with symbols I couldn't name. The magazine was heavy, silver rounds. I raised it. The muzzle tracked his chest, right where the grenade had torn him open, ribs glistening like cracked ivory. His eyes locked on mine, no fear, just waiting. He took another step. "Don't," I begged. "Please don't make me." His growl deepened. Louder, closer. He leaned forward until his shadow swallowed me whole, and for one impossible second his lips parted, not in hunger, but in words. Do it. The voice was broken, shredded by fangs and fury. But it was his. Tears blurred my sight. The gun wavered. This wasn't just survival. This was the end of everything we'd built. The last laugh, the last fight, the last secret shared under stars. And still, my finger curled against the trigger. But then he broke, not into pieces, into rage. He roared and lunged, not at me, not for me, but past me. His body crashed through the oak, splinters exploding, the impact rattling my bones. He tore into the trees, into the dark, into the night itself, as if leaving me alive was the cruelest choice of all. I dropped the gun. My chest heaved, vision swimming, the silence around me more unbearable than the screams had been. Because now I knew loyalty had boundaries. Love had limits. But Alex was boundless. He'd given me one last mercy, one last chance to live. Not because he wanted me safe, but because he wanted me haunted by the truth that I hadn't saved him. I hadn't ended him. I had let the unstoppable live. The night closed in, the fire sputtered, and somewhere deep in the woods his howl carried, long, sharp, filled with hunger. It was a sound that promised he would come back. Not tonight, not tomorrow, but one day, and when he did, the choice would not be mine. Dawn found the clearing before I did. A pale, bloodless light creeping through the branches, touching the wreckage like a hesitant hand. Smoke coiled from the dead fire, curling around the bodies of the hunters, their masks blank, their weapons cold. Nothing moved but the breeze. I stood there for a long time, hands empty, palms still raw from crawling through dirt and blood. The gun lay where I'd dropped it, half buried, its silver rounds glinting faintly in the new light. I couldn't bring myself to pick it up. It felt like a relic of a war I hadn't won, a war I hadn't even fought, just survived. Across the clearing, the wire traps hung slack and broken, their silver dulled, their runes cracked. Whatever force had made them hum with power was gone, burned out by something stronger. The monster my best friend had become had walked through every snare, every bullet, every line they'd drawn, and he was still out there. I pressed my back to a tree and slid down until I was sitting on the cold ground. My body felt hollow. My mind felt worse. I kept replaying it the moment his eyes met mine. The shape of his lips around those two words, "Do it," and my finger frozen on the trigger. I hadn't done it, and that choice now lived in me like a second heartbeat. Weeks later, people would ask questions about the noise in the woods that night, about the men who went in and didn't come out, about the shredded equipment and claw marks no bear could have made. I'd shrug, pretend I'd been somewhere else, pretend I didn't know, but every full moon I hear him. It starts as a vibration, low and far away, like a train you can't see yet. Then it rises, climbing the dark, a sound too huge for the night to hold. It isn't the sound of a predator on the hunt. It isn't even the sound of pain. It's the sound of a man who was my brother. Lost in a body he can't escape, trying to call me across the miles, the echo of the howl, and when it reaches me, I feel my palms go slick, my breath go shallow, my heart race like it's back in the clearing, because I know that mercy only delays the inevitable. He spared me not to save me. He spared me to leave a witness. So now I wait. I bolt my doors. I salt my thresholds. I keep iron under my bed like a charm I don't believe in. Every night I tell myself I'll be ready when he comes. And every night I know I'm lying because there's no ready for Alex. No ready for the thing he's become. The unstoppable doesn't knock. It doesn't warn, it howls. And when that howl finally comes for me, there won't be a choice left to make. At Whispering Narratives, we don't just tell stories. We open doors to the shadows. And sometimes, those shadows reach back. If you're still here after this one, subscribe before the next full moon. And share this if you still believe in mercy.